Welcome to the Nativot Shalom Shir. We're just about a week away from Hanukkah. And the question I'm going to talk about tonight, and that's going to be somewhat explained by the Nativot Shalom, is do we celebrate Hanukkah for the military victory of the Hashmonaim over the Greeks, or do we celebrate Hanukkah because of the spiritual victory, the victory of our being able to restore our identity as Jews? So in order to illustrate these two questions, I've attached two things to the actual Nativot Shalom tonight. And the first, I assume you can all see the screen share. The first is what you find in the Siddur, the additional prayer that you say during the Shemona Esrei, during Hanukkah, and also during the Birchat Hamazon. And let's just look at the words for a second. The time of Yocham, the high priest, and the Hashmonaim and his sons. Malchus Yovan Harsha Alamchi Yisrael Ashkicham Torasecha Lavir Mechukim Ritzonecha, when the wicked kingdom of Greece went against Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, to make them forget the Torah and to go away from the path of being a Jew. You, God, stood with us, stood with them at the time of our need. Rav to us Rivon, the few conquered the many. Dantos Dinam, and the Kamtas Igmos, we had revenge. Masarti Giborim Yad Chaloshim, the mighty warriors of Greece were overcome by the weak warriors of the Hashmonaim. Rabbi B'Yad Mi'atim, the many were overcome by the few. Tmeim B'Yad Tahorim, and those that were impure were overcome by those that were pure. Rishonim B'Yad Tzadikim, and so on. So that whole first paragraph, Lam Yisrael sees the Shul Gedola, Forkal Yom Hazeh, you did a great salvation. So what is that first paragraph talking about? That first paragraph is talking about a military victory, how we overcame our enemy. And then it goes on the last couple of sentences. After that, we went into the Beis Hamikdash, and we cleaned it out, and we made it holy again, we made it pure again, and we lit the candle, and we established 8 days of Hanukkah. Anyway, looking at that, it sounds like the emphasis is on the military victory. Now, to contrast that, I've put up a page from the Gemara in Gemara in Shabbos, in Perek Sheni, B'Mamed Likim. And the Gemara there asks, it says, my Hanukkah, what is Hanukkah? So I don't know if it's, you can see the highlight, my Hanukkah. And it says, it tells you, it says we don't fast on Hanukkah, we don't say a eulogy for somebody who's died. But then it gives the reason. It says, the Greeks entered into the temple Tameu kol hashmonim, they made impure, made tome all of the oils, shebehechel in the temple, uv'shegavro malchus beis Hashmonai, and when the house of the Hashmonaim were victorious, v'nitzchachim, after they were victorious, they only found one little vial of oil, shohaya manuach b'chosbo shel kohen gadol, that was sealed with the seal of the high priest, so that we would know that it was not defiled, it was not opened and used by the or to deface the Beis Hamikdash by the Greeks. So they found this one vial of oil. It was only enough to burn for one day, and Nasa Bones, a miracle happened. V'liku Mimenu Shmonas Yomim. So it burned for 8 days. Then it goes on to say, Lashana Acheres, next the following year, Kavui V'Ashum Yomim Tovim, B'Hodah. Then the next year, the Chachamim established festive days of giving thanks to God. So what is this about? Doesn't say much about a military victory, right? This talks about the spiritual victory. We were able to recover the oil, found one little vial of oil. It's a spiritual victory. So what is it? Is Hanukkah religious? Is it celebrate a spiritual victory or a military victory? So with that introduction, let's go to the Tivot Shalom. This is from the Tivot Shalom book on Hanukkah, the Mamre Hanukkah, this one right here. And this is on page 11, Yod Aleph. And it says, my Hanukkah. That's what we just read. So it says, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, just a moment. So the Gemara Shabbos talks about the Gemara we just read. My Hanukkah, Kislev, Yomi de Hanukkah Tamnina. The rabbis established the day of Hanukkah on the 25th day of Kislev. When the Greeks went into the temple, they made everything unclean and impure. As it said in the Gemara, they only found this one little vial that was kosher for lighting. It was only for one day, enough for one day. And a miracle happened. And 8 days, it lasted for 8 days. Excuse me. Lashana Acheres, the next year, as the Gemara said, the next day, the next year rather, I'm sorry, Kobe Mosab Yomin Tov, they made a Yom Tov out of this. Vagaras Marsha, the Marsha, baby brings Mashikosuv Aran, the wording of the Ran, Shulaficha Korim Chanukah Klom. That's why we call this Chanukah. We call the name Chanukah. Why? Klomer Chanu Kofhei. Chanu Kofhei, break that up, means they rested on Kofhei the 25th. Umashma, and it seems Shemafares Shelas Hagamora, my Hanukkah. It seems like that answers the question of why Hanukkah is Hanukkah. It's called Hanukkah because Chanu Kofhei. They rested on the 25th. So Lama Nikra Shemo Kain. Why is it called that? Because of all the Marsha then writes, the Kasha is a strong question. He says, my Chaniya Shayach Hocha, what is the rest? R-E-S-T, the resting of the Chashmonim have to do with anything? Given the Hoter Bayan Malacha. Do we rest on Hanukkah? On Hanukkah, you're allowed to do work. On Yom Tov, on a holiday, you're not allowed to do work. Hanukkah, you're allowed to work. Except for at least the first half hour while the candles are lit. So what kind of rest? Doesn't sound like an appropriate name. So makes more sense to talk about that what they did is this was the rededication of the altar. And because I'm reading a Perik Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Shmuel said the base Hashmonai Nigdazu Ganzu Amne Mizbeach, Shishoktu Anche over the Avodah Zorah, laws. Some of the Hashmonaim, when the Greeks were coming in to defile the temple, they hid. They took apart the Mizbeach and hid the rocks, the stones that made up the Mizbeach, so it wouldn't fall into the hands of the enemy. So they had to rebuild. Once they came in and purified the base of Mikdash, they had to rebuild the Mizbeach, the altar. And therefore it's called Chanukah, having to do with the Chanukah Mizbeach. Chanukah. But we can't say that, well, what is Hanukkah? Elam Eze Neis Kavu Lahem Kavu Osam Ladik Boneros. That only we're saying, how do we then say it's only because of that miracle that allowed the candles to be lit for that long? Vainusha Shela, my Hanukkah, Neno Lama Nikra Shmo Hanukkah. So the question isn't really why is it called Hanukkah? Why is the name Hanukkah? Elakamosha Perish Rashi Alezanes Kavua. It's like Rashi explains on a specific miracle. Klomer Mao Anes Huikori Shalishmo Kyavo Esmechan. What is the main miracle by which is called Hanukkah? Alzeh Meshiva Gemara, and this is what the Gemara is answering. To Anes Shematsu is Pacha Shema Viliko Verush Vorashomim. And the Gemara is answering that the main miracle is not the military victory, but is the spiritual victory to be able to recover the oil, to be able to light the Ner HaTami that had to be burning every day, and it lasted for 8 days instead of just the one where there's only enough oil, and that's the real miracle. Vakate Tamabai. So Madura Be'emes Nechshav Gam Pacha Shema L'Leis. Why does Rashi think that this is the principal miracle of Hanukkah? Bari Lechura, certainly Nes Hanitzachim Machoma who Nes Yoter Gadol. The overwhelming odds that we overcame in the war against the Greeks is a greater miracle, much greater miracle. So why is Rashi saying no? The greater miracle is finding the vial of oil. Kmosh Mesuras Kiborim Yad Chalashim, as I read in the introduction, Rav Yad Miatim, the weak overcame the strong, the few overcame the many. So Masai Ma'at Mul Machne Rav Kechol Asher Al Safas Hayom. We were fighting an enemy so multiple that there were so many of them, just like the seeds of the sands of the sea. But and this victory of the Maccabees over the Greeks was such a high miracle beyond any imagination. You couldn't even think about such a thing. And we can explain Alpim Ad Homer B'Midrash Reish Bereshis. It says in the Midrash Bereshis, Shadorosh is a pasuk. Remember the first couple of sentences of the Torah of Bereshis. It says, and so on. The world was nothingness, and darkness was hovering over the face of the deep, and so on. So the Chachamim explained those wordings al arba hagalios, on the 4 exiles that the Jewish people went through. Who maybe asmachta mikrai l'kulam. They use an analogy from the words in the pasuk in Bereshis to show which exile it's referring to. Voretz Haisa, with the words, and the land was, Tohu was nothingness, Zugalos Bavel. This was the Babylonian exile. Uvo, that's what Tohu, right? Then Uvo, the next word, Zegolos Midai. That was the Persian the Persian exile. B'choshech, the darkness, Segulas Yavon, Galus Yavon. This was the Greek exile. Shechachshicha Einayim Shal Yisrael B'Gizro Sayim. The Greeks darkened the eyes, made the eyes of the Jew dark because of their evil decrees. Shoysa Omer Lehem Kosfu Al Keren Hashor She'en Lechem Chelek Elkei Yisrael. They made them write down that they have no more connection with the God of Israel. There's no such thing as the God of Israel. Apita home, and the last words, Choshel Pisa home, Zegalus Mamlechas Harsha. This is the exile of the evil kingdom. She'ein lohem cheker kamo atahom. There's no end to it, just like the depths. You can't see the end of the current exile, the Roman exile. V'ruach Elokim al-chepes zerucho shel melech HaMashiach. And it says the Spirit of God was hovering over it. This refers to the Spirit of the King Mashiach. Yesh lomer hemshech hapasuk, and others say the continuing of the sentence, V'yom Elokim yihi or vayhi or. God says, let there be light, and there was light. Shekal galus hinu klipa b'fnei atzmo. Every exile was a klipa, a covering of bad, covering the good by itself. And the only way to survive, to get rid of this klipa, this outer covering, and to survive, was Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or Vayhi Or, is by recognizing God said, let there be light, and there was light. Koach HaOr, the power of light, Gover Al Kol Klipos Shel HaGoyos, the power of the Guliot. The power of light is stronger than all of the evils that are covering us from these exiles. V'hinei HaKasuv Korea L'Galut Yavan Choshech. And what we read before, we talk about the exile of the Greek exile as darkness. B'chol galus, hayakashum yochedes v'gzeres nilva galus. Every one of the exiles had different hardships we had to go through. B'galus yavon, atabar hamiyuchad shalahu choshech. And the main character of the Greek exile was that it was darkness. The whole purpose of the Greek exile was to blind the eyes of the Jew to Torah and mitzvos. This is what the Maccabees were fighting about. To get rid of. I'm sorry, the Greeks wanted to darken the eyes of the Jews in terms of their observance. They made him write down, you have no part in the God of Israel. The main purpose of light, which is the main aspect of a Jew, is hargasha, is the feeling that every one of us have, that we are a part of the God of Israel. As we've said many times, Bani matem laHashem Elokechem, you are children to God. And as Rameir said, Ben kach atem banim. No matter what you do, whether you're following everything, you're not following everything, you're God's children, special children. Kol od, Yehudi margish karov l'Hashem yisborach. The closer a Jew feels to God, hu yochel laseit lisbol es kol hatzaros chol haglayos. The closer you are to God, makes it easier for you to withstand and overcome all of the pain of the exile, not only of the exile, but all the pain, all the troubles, call it sorrows. Your closeness to God, your moon and God gives you the strength to do that. As it's written, Imonochi B'tzora, God is saying, I am with you, Jewish people, in your troubles. Achalsenu v'achabdehu, when you are, uh, I will rescue you and I'll make you honorable. Shemargish, the Jew feels ki Hashem Yisborach k'v'yochol letzado. It's like God is right at our side. Umargish is called over love and is feeling. God is suffering with us, feeling everything we're going through. K'moshe Nemar, ki yadu esmachos, said, I know your pain. I saw an interesting interpretation in the Tilla Mizmor LeDavid that we say 3 times on Shabbos and Shalosh, and one of the phrases is Gam ki elech begates al moves lo ira ra ki atu imadi, which is generally interpreted as, even though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil because you are with me. Interpretation I saw was Gam ki elech begates al moves. Even though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, lo ira, I'm not afraid. But ra ki atu imadi. It's too bad. It's bad that you have to be with me and suffering with me. We're saying to God, too bad that you have to suffer with us. And that's what he's saying, that God is with us in every one of our difficulties. V'golos yavon, and in this aspect, the exile of the Greeks was more difficult than all the other exiles, all the other 3 exiles. Israel. The Greeks wanted to sever the bond connecting us to the God of Israel. They wanted to destroy the power of Bnei Israel that came from the connection with the God of Israel. He says, all of the decrees of the Greeks were for that purpose of destroying the bond between ourselves and God. To destroy that bond. Therefore, what were their decrees? Gazra al Shabbos, Mila v'chodesh. They decreed that you cannot keep Shabbos anymore, cannot circumcise the children, cannot have Mila, and cannot do Kiddush Levana, sanctify the new month. Shehema Ore Or, because these things are the light. These 3 things are the things that light up the Jew and strengthen his bond with God. Now he explains what that means. Shabbos he abris ba'kesher b'Yisrael Hashem Yisborach. Shabbos is the covenant that God made specifically between himself and the Jewish people. Shabbos is referred to as Os Heliolim. It's a sign forever that God is our God. So that's the first thing. Mila and the circumcision, Nichrasu Aleh Yigimel Prisos. They cut off, they uprooted 13 different covenants. Inyan Chodesh, and just like, and the aspect of Kiddush Levana, sanctifying the moon, Kamamro Yisrael Modim Levana. As it said, Yisrael, B'nai Yisrael, is compared to the moon. Shizemora ala kesher beinehem Hashem Yisborach Yiduk. All these things are signs of the strength of the knot between the Jew and God. Vayavonim b'ritzosam lahashchis eineim to Israel gazra al because the Greeks wanted to blind us in our observance to God, and therefore they came up with these decrees prohibiting that. Ki b'chachmasam hatama, because of the impure wisdom that they had, chachmas Yivanis akasha mikol, the impure wisdom of the Greeks is most difficult of all. Yodu shaderech ha'ikaris lachriach chas v'shalom es am Yisrael. They knew that the way to, God forbid, sever the cord of the Jewish people was l'natek as Yehudi ma'Hashem Yisborach, was to be able to cut them off from the connection with God as is established by these three mitzvahs, Shabbos, Milah, and Chodesh. Vasi shel gerosam hayesh Yehudi yikasim she'ein lechem chelek b'elkei Yisrael. The main aspect of this gezerah, this decree of the evil decrees, where they had to write down that chas v'sholom they will have no connection to the God of Israel. With this, the eyes of the children of Israel were blinded by this darkness. And this is what we say in the prayer that I read at the very beginning. Al Anisim, on the miracles that happen on Chanukah. When the wicked king of wicked kingdom of Greece, stood against the Jewish people to blind them from the Torah, to make them to leave and to abandon the various commandments that God has given to us. The Greeks, and this is a very important point, the Greeks were not interested in annihilating the Jews. They didn't want to kill the Jews. Unlike Haman and Purim, the Purim story, Haman wanted to kill every Jew. He didn't care. You're a Jew, you're dead. That's for shalom. The Greeks weren't that. The Greeks just wanted us to follow the Greek traditions, follow the Greek idols, and give up on the Torah and mitzvahs. And then they came to realize that despite this, that the Jews had light that was lighting up their neshamas, their souls, and with this they weren't able to overcome them with their tuma. Bikshu Reshis call so therefore they understood they couldn't overcome the Jews. They had to bring darkness to them in their service to God. So that's what they wanted to do first. Take away the most important things to them. Kasher Yachshiku Einayim Nishmosem, once the Jews' eyes were blinded, then it'd be easy, they would forget the Torah. All these, they weren't allowed to keep the mitzvahs. So if they weren't allowed to keep, they'd forget them, and eventually they'd come around chas v'shalom to their way of thinking. Therefore, when the Greeks came into the temple, lo bikshu davar rak l'tamei kol hashmanaim hamiyodim lalat orim, or their main purpose was to defile all of the oil in the temple that they knew would light the menorah in the temple, would light the menorah, the light, they knew that this was the light. This was the source of light that lit all of Israel, all of Bnei Israel. So therefore, al kain bikshu levatlo mehem kidei lahashchis eneim. So they wanted to get rid of this oil, so they couldn't. Their eyes would be dark. They wouldn't be connected to the light of God. Zem amar hamidrash, and this is why the midrash says choshech Segalus Yavon. Choshen refers to the exile of the Greeks. Kichal Magamasem, Haisa Lahashchis Eineim Israel. The whole purpose, the subject matter of their work was to darken the eyes of Bnei Israel. Therefore, the main part of the miracle was the light of the menorah. Because the light, when they were able to find this vial of oil and relight the menorah, it returned the light to the eyes of the children of Israel. Etzem mitzius apach hatahar oisulamala min haseichel. The reality of finding this one vial of untouched oil and what happened with it is above our understanding. Koshin hanes atzmo, and not only finding it is I mean, how do you find this when they were so intent on destroying everything else? But not only that, but the miracle itself, that they burned for 8 days. This was the victory of Bnei Israel. Shechazer ha'or lahayr l'klal Yisrael, that the light returned to light Bnei Israel. So we see from this Nativot Shalom that the main part of Hanukkah is the spiritual aspect of it, to give light. And we think of the times we're living in, and we know we need light. And we know that our job is to give light. We're supposed to be a light to the nation, or Lagoyim. So we have to go into this Hanukkah and absorb the light that we get from the Nerot. And when we light these Nerot, we light our menorahs, it reminds us of the menorah of the Beis Hamikdash that provided light to the world. And that's our job. And there's just an interesting sidelight I want to tell you. On Hanukkah, there is no mitzvah of a Suda. There's no mitzvah to have a festive meal. Unlike Purim. Purim, you have Sudat Purim. It's one of the commandments of how you celebrate Purim. Why not Hanukkah? Now, there are a number of poskim who say that, well, yeah, okay, it's not really a command to have a Suda, but you should, every Suda that you have where you talk Torah is like a Suda mitzvah. Okay, that's an explanation, but that's not an explanation. Why is it not commanded like in Purim? We're commanded to eat, to feast. So I saw an interesting pshat in the more above Basra, I believe, that said the difference is Haman in Purim wanted to kill us and wanted to destroy all of our bodies, including our ability to have nourishment and our ability to eat, because you can't eat if you're not here. He wanted to kill us all. So therefore, we celebrate that he wasn't successful by eating and having a festive meal. Hanukkah, the Greeks did not want to kill us. They only wanted to kill us spiritually. It has nothing to do with food. So therefore, there's not a mitzvah specifically on Hanukkah for a Sudas mitzvah. Okay, Adkan, we'll try Lee Neder next week. Hanukkah starts Wednesday night, a week from tomorrow night. So Lee Neder will have another shir on Hanukkah next Tuesday night, God willing. I wish everybody a wonderful rest of the week. Start getting ready to, to receive the light. We're still in the book of Bereshis, and we see that the Torah ended in Devorim with the words "L'Einei Kol Yisrael," and the eyes of all of Israel, and the last the last sentence, Le'eni Kol Yisrael, though the Rosh Hashanah of that, the last three words of the Torah in Deuteronomy is Kli, vessel. In order to receive the light, get the light, to get what Hashem is pouring down on us, we have to be a vessel to receive it. We have to be prepared and ready to receive the Kedusha and the light coming from Hashem. If we close our eyes and we hold our hands like that instead of making them a Kli, we got a problem. So let's be a vessel to receive the light and spread the light. Anyway, have a wonderful, wonderful Shabbat. I'm going to stop the recording now.